Good morning, all you lovely people. It's morning here. Got my coffee. I might have small eyes. I've only just kind of woken up. But I was looking on Facebook at Starfire Tor's latest update, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. It's not a big report yet, but it's just she does timeline edit updates. And I thought this was interesting because the last week I suddenly started feeling this kind of immense anxiety inside myself, which I don't usually feel at all. And I noticed a lot of my female friends who are quite sensitive, who I consider to be connected and very conscious, were also complaining that they were feeling a sudden extreme sense of anxiety. I mean, it got to the point where I nearly just completely erased my YouTube channel because I was getting so anxious, and I didn't know if it was coming because, you know, when you start putting yourself out there into the public, people start judging you and criticising you and calling you like a reptilian shape-shifting hybrid and a bitch and all this stuff. I didn't know if it was just that energy sort of as an empath affecting me. But now I'm reading this, I'm starting to think that it could have something to do with this timeline edit. So apparently we just narrowly missed another nuclear disaster where it could have been like really bad. And so she says, breaking news update: core matrix timeline edit averts nuclear tragedy again. North Korea ICBM nuclear strike becomes only ICBM launch. Phantom sunspot fires off M1 and C1 solar flares and CME. July 4th, 2017, solar activity and time shift activity report. Yesterday, July 3rd, 2017, I wrote that the core matrix had engaged in a planet-saving timeline edit. I could tell by the type of time shift markers being reported, which involved objects altering or apporting in or out of existence. I wasn't as yet sure what we were saved from, but I suspected that it was a nuclear disaster. I laid out my reasoning. Now there is evidence that I was right. So she'd been saying in another report that she believed we were coming again to a nuclear disaster. She was reading the signs. After I posted my important time shift and timeline edit report, North Korea successfully tested an ICBM missile. This missile is very dangerous because it is capable of carrying a nuclear payload and can travel far enough to strike the state of Alaska in the USA. Like the other times when I've showed how the core matrix prime directive intervenes in planet-ending events, it is most likely that North Korea did launch a nuclear strike in a coexisting timeline. This strike was not permitted to hit anything, meaning that the timeline edit happened before the nuclear disaster manifested into any coexisting timeline. Therefore, what the core matrix did was not a timeline reboot, which we were dealing with in 2016 and before. It was a straight up, although emergency, timeline edit. Remember the M1 flare I wrote about from yesterday and how unexpected it was to mainstream science? Today there was another flare, a C1 flare, and yet there's absolutely no visual sign of any sunspot ever existing that fired off these flares. So she calls that like a major, like a timeline marker. So if you see a lot of, the sun is basically guiding our timelines and in charge of editing it, is what she was saying. I guess that doesn't really fit into the flat earth model, eh? So... and yet there is absolutely no visual sign of any sunspot ever existing that fired off these flares. NASA has reported that this sunspot, or possibly two different sunspots, appeared fired off solar flares and then vanished. I pointed out how this behaviour is a time shift marker. Yes, that is exactly what it is. And then she gives a link to the missile launch. North Korea successfully test-launched ICBM, US officials confirm, published 4th of July. Meanwhile, the time shift and timeline edit activity continues, so watch for the time shift markers. Here is a brief summary of what to watch for in time shift markers. Due to frequency and timeline edit changes associated with time shifts, there may be time shift triggered earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, weather and geophysical events. Tech communications may be disrupted. Cetaceans may strand or swim wrong way. Auroras will form. Time shifts create an amplification of paranormal activity, ghost activity, haunting activity, poltergeist activity, apports, synchronicity, psi abilities, time word, object prompts, deja vu, psychic dreaming, precognition events, awareness of time shift living dead people. That's what they talk about in the Mandala effect. Like I explained, the Mandala effect actually was stolen from Starfire Tor's work. Timeline altering events, timeline looping, altered terrain, altered structures, altered world events and more. And again, I'll put a link down to this article if you want to read it yourself. Very fascinating stuff. And I have to say that my sense of anxiety has sort of lifted today. I don't seem to be feeling it as much. So yeah, I'm thinking it was connected to that. It was that same sort of anxiety when I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election and then she didn't, and I felt that huge relief to know that Donald Trump had won, which I couldn't really explain because, believe me, I was not a Trump supporter, and I didn't see him as a good candidate. I saw it basically as like shit and shitter in the election. You're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't. That's how I kind of see most elections, really. But yeah, when he was elected, I woke up to this anxiety just going out my body, and this huge like relief, as if something huge had shifted, the timeline had shifted. So yeah, things aren't always as they seem in the real world. And yeah, I hope all of you lot are feeling better out there. And yeah, one love. Have a great day.